This week in Tabletop Weekly, we're the partners of Solarian Games.
I'm James.
I'm Jason.
I'm Pete. And tonight we are joined by Sean Kelly. This week's stories: did D&D's 2024 Player's Handbook scorch previous records? Or is WotC inflating sales numbers for Player's Handbook? Beadle and Grimm's new map collection is out, or is coming out. Marvel and DC lose their trademark for superhero. That's quote unquote superhero. And we're going to talk with Sean Kelly about his podcast, RPG Sean, and his former show, Gaming and BS. So here's the first story. Our handbook, D&D 2024's handbook scorches previous records. So according to WotC and such, Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook has surpassed all their sales in the past. I've seen it said that it was 3 times more than their highest previous sale. But I've also seen something along the lines of that's how many they printed, not how many they sold. But I can't get any actual numbers. Like I couldn't find any. I dug around too. I went a bunch of searching, could not find what the actual numbers are. But anyway, that's what Hasbro says. They said that they
so the previous highest numbers were for the 2014 5e Player's Handbook, right?
Right. And well, there was also something called Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which was apparently a really fast-selling book.
Okay, so they're saying that was another one of the highest-selling books. Because I use that one because I play an artificer, so I use Tasha's Cauldron in my game.
Okay,
it's a good book.
Yeah.
Sean, do you use it? Do you play 5e? I don't remember.
It's been a while. I have played. I think the last one I did was the Curse of Strahd campaign that fizzled. But other than that, the full Tomb of Annihilation is what I ran. Yeah. But I stopped. I don't have a lot of the splat books. So I kind of stopped at the core books and then some of the special edition covers of like Volo's Guide and the one with the fish on it. I can't remember. People that are playing D&D are like pulling their hair out. Like,
what are you talking about? They're screaming the book's name right now.
I know, right?
But I'm
Mordenkainen's book. I didn't, I had.
What was Mordenkainen's book about? I mean, it's great that they're still using that name.
It's Monsters of the Universe. It was like a big monster book.
Okay.
Well, and it actually had it set up so if you wanted to play monsters, you could actually play monsters from the book.
That's really good. I mean, kind of. No, I was going to say you always could, but this one actually was setting up the stats to make it easier to do. Is what you're saying?
Yes, they said you could, but then there was nothing to facilitate. It's like, so I just make whatever up. I can.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm looking at the story that we had, and you're right. It's a little bit unclear because first they say that they tripled the print run. Which I'm like, okay, I mean that's good. That they're not going to do a big print run without a reason. They're a big company that have people that figure that out. But then later it says, so far the initial sales have outperformed the previous editions 3 times over.
Right.
So I feel like maybe this is coming from Pop Insider. They don't provide citations.
They didn't.
So I think it's possible this might be a little bit of lazy journalism. And I say that as somebody who's doing the ultimate lazy journalism of not even reading the whole article.
Right. Well, we're not a journalist show.
We're not journalists.
No, we're not. We're
just lazy.
Yeah, we're lazy big mouths who just talk about stuff.
So maybe it's a good time to pick the second story and for the counterpoint.
So counterpoint to all that is WotC inflating sales numbers for the Player's Handbook. So there's a guy named Steven, I think it's Glicker, of the podcast or YouTube cast, whatever you want to call it, Roll for Combat. And he claims that he actually has access to the sales data. He didn't say where he gets that. I think he said he subscribes to some things, but I'm not really sure what that means. But he says that WotC claims to have sold 133,000 copies of the Player's Handbook. And he said that his data suggests that the 2024 Player's Handbook sold 3,773 copies. It's a very specific number. He goes on to suggest that the sales may include all editions of the Player's Handbook, not just the 2024 one, and including the digital. He also went on to say that he lives in New York and he went all over. He said just outside of Manhattan, and he went over to every store he could do in the amount of time that he had. And he said that none of the retailers outside of Flags had that's friendly local area gaming stores had the books. So I mean, that kind of makes sense. But like you said, Target didn't have it, Walmart didn't have whatever. I don't really care.
It wasn't out yet.
I know.
So okay, hold on a second. I'm just going to stop for a second here. And the fact that this guy said that they only sold 3,773 copies in that week, tells me this is not somebody who knows what he's talking about.
Probably not
all, not even in the slightest, because there's no way, even if it was the biggest steaming pile of horse pucky in the universe, that they could sell that small of a number in the physical stores. Did all of you go in and see the Player's Handbook in the physical stores when it was released at the friendly local gaming shops?
Did not. I've been busy as all get out.
Well, I went into two of them, and this is not a representative sample. This is completely anecdotal information, but I went to Tabletop Gaming Center up in Newington, and I went to Elm City Games in New Haven. Both of them had big stacks of books, and every single book had a name on it. They were all claimed. They were all spoken for. There was no extras left over for the public, and they were huge stacks of books in just these two. And
that does sound like
that's kind of what is happening everywhere.
That sounds like a exceedingly low number. But anyway, that's what he said. We're not saying that. I don't agree with him. That was what he said. And I mean, you could check his video out and see for yourself. Maybe give him some crap if you know different. But here's the thing. He was like, one of the things he did is he did discount digital, as in like, well, that probably includes digital. And I'm like, well digital counts. Digital counts. Why wouldn't that count?
Yeah.
I mean, that's people buying product.
Unless it's a bundle where if you're buying a bundle, then no, you shouldn't count that as two sales.
No, but he said it was like on D&D Beyond, like on the app, like the actual app. But that's, of course, I mean, there are people going to tell some people buy their books.
Yeah.
So why that shouldn't be counted.
Well, the point is, if they were counting it in the 2014 edition, then it's apples to apples.
Right.
That's the only thing that matters. If he's saying last time they only counted physical and this time they're counting both, then yes, I would say that there's a discrepancy.
Okay, that's fair.
But I guess we don't know. So the big news story is people have things to say about it and we don't know.
Right.
Wow. They say that the numbers were from BookScan. So I don't know if you guys have ever gone to BookScan.
Yeah.
So BookScan, you have to pay to get there, but you can find out all the books that are hot and then determine how many copies were sold. So they're considering BookScan, which I think is still like 3,700 is still low. I mean, it's on Amazon. I mean, you could almost count that many people in your
we can move
3,700.
Right. We can move 3,700 copies of a game. You know, our print run was bigger than that for Top Secret. So there's no way that WotC is selling, literally a thimble full of books.
Not only, I mean, look, they've got 8 million subscribers to D&D Beyond. I think I saw somewhere. I highly doubt 3,700 is a realistic number.
Yeah. I mean, if everybody who went to GaryCon bought a copy, that would outsell it.
Yeah. If everybody who went to TotalCon bought it. No, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Okay. But I think the real story is, how are people receiving it so far? Is it selling? Is it moving? I'd like to see more numbers, but everything that I'm hearing from people, I mean, I've got the books. I love them. I think they did a great job with the new one. And everyone I know who plays regularly has picked it up already.
Yeah, I actually got my copy on Amazon. I swore kicking and screaming I wouldn't buy it, but in one of our gaming groups that we're playing in, they'd like to use some of the spells, like the monk classes better. So I got it mostly for Mary. Oh, that's the story I'll stick to.
That's your excuse?
Yeah. But
You can
no,
use that. Yeah, use that.
But if there's stuff I can, as with any game book, if there's stuff I can steal from it, like I will still say I hate the art, but I'm just looking at it for stuff I can pull, not particularly go, oh, this is such a beautiful book, let me hug it, So,
So
I
let me
don't
ask.
think you're alone in that, in the disliking the art. I'm hearing that from a lot of people, and this is from people who have all different perspectives on it. It just seems that the art is corporatized.
Right.
Somebody did. I wish I could find this, and if anybody can find this little meme and send it to me, please do. Somebody found matching poses in stock art photography for each one of the things, and they were all like corporate people standing at a whiteboard and smiling at the office, and it was matching the poses in the.
So do you know that happens in comic books all the time? Like in major comic books, artists will draw scenes and it's actually like it's pretty much a trace and then refinish of a previous piece of art. That is actually a common thing that happens in comic books, and people get pissed off whenever they realize their artists are just basically copying another artist.
Well, I didn't know that. I was just talking about the fact that how a lot of the artwork in the book, they're smiling in the middle of a combat. Like, they're making that big face. Like just like they're clinking their coffees and all that kind of stuff. And it just seems like they were trying so hard to not upset anybody with artwork that seemed too edgy that they went a little too far the other direction.
Oh my God.
I will say this. The picture where they're having the feast and there's all the I can't even pronounce the
anachronistic.
Word. Yeah, food. Look at where the hand placement of the female tiefling is to the male tiefling that's sitting down. And someone pointed that out to me. I'm like, oh my God, yes, that what it looks like is happening. So,
oh no,
yeah,
I would be happy if somebody snuck in a good little handy motion like that.
Yeah, you hit the right word, handy.
And Harrigan in the chat is pointing out that comic book artists are also on a brutal monthly schedule, which is which is different from what they were dealing with here. They had 10 years to make this book.
Yeah.
So.
Oh no, I wasn't. Look, I wasn't criticizing anybody. I'm just saying that is something that I've read about. That is something that it happens in all art industries. As far as I know, there are times when that kind of stuff happens. But I don't get mad. I was saying people got mad. I don't get mad. I don't care. I like art. I like it.
You guys have not joined the sushi rage. That is
what is that?
James's art.
We're supposed to be mad about
James's art piece, right? Look at that art piece, and they claim that there's sushi on that table.
Yeah, there is sushi. There's sushi, tacos, empanadas. There's all kinds of modern day food.
Listeners, if you're listening to the podcast, the audio version tomorrow, that sound you heard was Peter's head hitting the microphone.
That was intentional, by the way.
But you know what? Okay, I agree that that's silly, but it's hard for me to be too upset about it because my favorite fantasy world is the disc world, and things from the real world are always popping up in there. So, as long as they mean it, as long as they were doing it with some purpose and they weren't just being sloppy, okay. But maybe they were just being sloppy.
I personally think they were being sloppy. Like that there's a couple of art pieces of art in there that just so remove me from D&D. Like it kills it. Like the suspension of disbelief flies out the window. And I just have to mock it and draw mustaches on people.
To be fair, let's be completely fair. 1E, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, right?
Yeah.
There are plenty of goofy, funny pieces in there, like the guy with the Mickey Mouse ears. And
I love it. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean,
yeah,
it's always kind of been there.
Okay. While we're being fair, I was thinking about this the other day because I love gaming history, right? Try to read everything I can and watch everything I can. And so because of that, I'm always very aware of how each generation of gamers reacts to the ones before and after. Because everybody right now is upset because this kind of gaming isn't what I'm used to gaming like, right? Like now they go to Starbucks. I hate that they go to Starbucks, right? But when D&D, forget even when D&D came out, go earlier than that, go back to chainmail. And when they first introduced the idea of having wizards in a war game,
Oh yeah.
every war gamer was incensed. They were like, the only kind of gaming that's acceptable is Napoleonic historical wargaming. You cannot have wizards in a war game. And then when they came out with D&D, every old school grognard at the time was just like, this is completely nerfed. It's terrible. These kids are useless. If you're not playing a war game, you're just a little wimp. So, what comes around goes around, right?
Hey, you know what Socrates wrote? Kids these days.
He did.
He did. I mean, like, he literally did.
They were mad because people were writing things down in books instead of just remembering them.
Yes. You're going to lose something if you take out the oratory.
You are spoiling the children.
Yes. How will they learn to tell stories?
Oh my gosh. I said I'm burning all my books.
All right, let's move on. Who wants to do Beetle and Grimms? How about you, Jason? You found that one.
I'll do the
you?
next one. How about James gets this one?
Okay, James, go ahead.
All right. Let me get to it.
Is it Beetle? Beadle? Is that Beetle?
Beetle and Grimms. Yeah,
Okay.
this is oh my gosh, the actor who's a big gamer.
Matt Lillard.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
My next thing was going to be the really nice guy that everybody likes.
Okay.
I still couldn't remember his name. Yeah, this is his his partnership. And we've lost James. Okay, let's keep going with the story.
Whoops.
So until we get James back, we have a big all-seeing eye appearing where he was. So anyways, they have a new map collection, the Dungeon Master's Guide Premium Map Collection, coming out in November, just in time for Christmas. 30 battle maps with artists commissioned to create full color realizations of the black and white maps. 2 canvas area maps. I've seen pictures of these. They're beautiful, of the city of Greyhawk and Eastern Auric. I can't pronounce Auric. And then a 4-panel DM screen. And so Beetle and Grimm, I can't say it right. They have, their brand is making beautiful, high quality stuff that's very expensive. So with that in mind, it's not too bad at $144. It's definitely for the more well-heeled dungeon master.
Yeah, I would say so.
It will be beautiful. I will probably not buy it, and then 3 years from now, I will wish I had it, and I will overpay for it on an auction.
Yeah, like that other. What was it? 2 weeks ago, the minis, the dragon mini. What's it? Wormy minis.
Yes.
Like, if you don't get them, you're gonna want them later. I can't get James on the stream. So
oh dear.
I don't know what's going on.
Text him in the background to see if he's having some technical problems.
All right, so go ahead, talk about this while I work on James.
Okay. So Sean, have you bought any Beetle and Grimm? Or seen
I have not, but I know that in this box, the Greyhawk map and the City of Greyhawk maps are vinyl, I believe.
Oh, shoot.
So
Yes.
yeah, they're not just like paper. So though I think it's only those 2, and I think the rest, yeah, it says canvas area maps. So
canvas area maps.
Oh, that's what they're. Yeah. So the canvas area maps of City of Greyhawk and Eastern Urk. Yeah. So I think
not vinyl.
they're not vinyl. I get. So my apologies. They're canvas. They're
okay.
Not like
no, I mean
paper,
canvas is pretty good. I've pulled the map out before that I'm about to grab, but I'll do it again. So I'm far away from the microphone right now, but for anybody who is listening later, I'm basically pulling up my 4-foot by 3-foot canvas Greyhawk map that I had made. So being able to just get one ready to go would be an awfully great thing to do. Because
I wish they would have done vinyl. I have the Eberron vinyl map.
Really?
But it was, it was not Wizards that did it. It was, oh shoot, I don't remember the company.
Another third party that was licensed.
They did the board game for Serenity, Firefly too. I can't remember the company name.
In the chat, Shanbot V42 big ups for beating number 42, calls it Gucci D&D. I like that.
Very nice product.
Gucci D&D.
Yeah.
Gale Force
Hey,
9.
James, can we hear James?
James, if you are on, you are muted. All right. Gale Force 9. They're the ones that did those the Dungeon Master screen. I forget what it was called, the something Keep, and it was like a $300 Dungeon Master screen that was basically a castle. That was Gale Force 9.
Okay.
So Sean, you're saying they also did the vinyl Eberron maps.
They did, and I think they also did the vinyl map collection of Tomb of Annihilation that you could buy, which I also have. Yeah.
So Sean, wait a minute, real quick. You ran Tomb of Annihilation. I want to get back. I wanted to ask you about this. How long did that last? Because doesn't that usually like kill people quickly?
Well, not until you get to the tomb.
Okay.
No, there's you got to find the tomb.
Oh, and once you find it, that's it.
Well, and we were playing once a month for like, one Saturday a month for 8 hours at a time for about a year. I think it was a year and some odd months. So it didn't go 2 years, but yeah.
So there was a lot of time in that build up.
Well, Tomb of Horrors is different than Tomb of Annihilation, even though it's right. I mean, I ran Tomb of Annihilation. I ran Tomb of Horrors at Gamehole Con 5e. And I started out with, I think everybody started out as first level. And then once their character died, I would give them another character that was second level. And then the next character would be third. So whoever could make it through as a first level character, I guess, kind of won. But
that's a really
that was
cool way to play it.
Yeah. But it's, I mean, 5th edition is, I mean, Tomb of Annihilation or Tomb of Horrors, 1st edition AD&D. Like it's a whole different ball game. Like one trap, boom, done, gone, right?
Right. And it's meant for a different style of play. It's meant for the kind of thing where you bring in 6 copies of your character and they're all, the first, the second, the third, the fourth.
Right.
You're expecting that.
I'm trying to find
make a character up in 5 minutes if I can keep the stats.
Right. Exactly.
I'm trying to find the woman who did the maps for that Beetle and Grimm. She's on Twitter and I saw it earlier and I didn't even make note of it. I can't remember who it was.
Oh, okay. It wasn't Alyssa Faden, was it?
It very well could have been. It's not somebody I follow, but somebody that retweeted it.
Okay. Alyssa is one of the best cartographers out there. She's a go-to for a lot of great stuff. So could have been her. If it wasn't, then I apologize to the person who it was.
Hey, did we mention that it includes like a 4-panel DM screen? It looked pretty impressive too.
Haven't seen it. I'm imagining it must be made of wood with gold inlay and some.
It actually has TV screens built into it.
Right.
Brett bought the silver edition, I think, for was it the Icewind Dale, which was the Rime of the Frost Maiden. So he bought the silver edition from Beetle and Grimm for that one, to get all the bells and whistles, because he was going to get like the miniatures and do like the whole thing. And so, I mean, I kind of imagine they do fine work. Like it's like the HP Lovecraft stuff, maybe, but for D&D,
And in the chat, Laramie says that they did the Beetle and Grimm for Sea King's Malice, and they were very nice boats.
Oh, cool.
So I can imagine. I mean, I would love to have the Dosh to be getting all of this stuff, but it's beautiful. I like to see it.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on to the next story. This is a little stepping out of TTRPG land and into the general nerdiverse, but I thought it was very interesting. Marvel and DC have lost the trademark for the phrase superhero. So the first thing that was amazing to me was that they had the trademark for the word superhero.
Yeah.
Apparently, Marvel and DC have jointly held 4 trademarks for the term superhero, superheroes, and similar things. And these go all the way back as far as 1967. And what happened was recently, a company called Super Babies Limited filed a trademark for their comic, which is called Super Babies, not superhero, just Super Babies.
Mhm.
And DC threatened legal action against them and tried to get their trademark canceled. So, and their claim was that Super Babies would create confusion because it was too similar to superheroes, and people would think that it was somehow connected to DC or Marvel. So, in response, Super Babies Limited filed their own petition to cancel DC and Marvel's trademarks. And I have read the petition. It is a thing of beauty. We'll link it in the show notes. I would recommend people go download the PDF. It's actually they included a bunch of examples from Marvel Comics and DC Comics that support their legal argument in the comics themselves.
Nice.
They actually showed examples of supervillains trying to steal the word superhero and trying to trademark Spider-Man's image to use against him. And it was a beautiful filing. Basically, what they said was that DC and Marvel did not invent the concept of superheroes, and that the term goes back to at least 1909.
Ooh.
So before either one of them existed. Trademark law, first of all, doesn't even allow competitors to jointly own a single mark. That's not even how it's supposed to work.
Ooh,
And
shit.
superhero in general is a generic term, so anybody should be allowed to use it. In fact, people have without being sued. So they've been inconsistent in the way that they've done this. And they didn't even end up responding to the petition. They ended up losing by default. So now, in case you were planning to use the word superhero and you were afraid of the trademark that these big giant companies owned, fear no more. The supervillains have been defeated.
Right.
Anybody can use the phrase superhero. It is now officially a generic term.
So here's the.
I thought a bunch of RPGs were going to have to rewrite and re-release their entire rule set based on that terminology, but thank God that's been cleared up. I just want to say.
I think it's kind of it seems ironic that the supervillains in this story were the ones who claimed to own the superhero trademark.
Exactly. I mean, they've I guess they've used pretty heavy-handed tactics on people in the past, which I'm not surprised by.
No.
I think the one thing that the fan universe has in common, from video games to tabletop to comic books to movies, is that the actual people who make the money off of it, the corporate owners, are generally kind of jerks about it.
Yep. Money will do that.
Yes. So please
Two
send us enough money that we can be jerks about it.
Space Marines.
Mm-hmm.
What happened with that?
Can of worms?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you don't know Space Marines, Jason? You can't use Space. Can we use Space Marines on this? We might get banned.
We might get banned.
Might get C&D now that I've used.
Let's do it.
The terminology.
So here on
this.
Space Marines Weekly, can you tell me what exactly the situation was with Space Marines?
Games Workshop owns Space Marines, as far as I know.
Yes, and they've sued other people for trying
to.
They've sued other people for trying to use the term Space Marines because they said that we own that. We own that word.
And did they get away with it because the term predates them?
A little bit. They did sometimes. I don't know how long. I don't know if they've lost it since, but at one point there was a point where I think they shut down a company because of that, didn't they?
I mean,
there was something that came up, like a novel or something that was going to be titled that, or they were going to use that moniker to describe a faction in a novel that was not related to Games Workshop. I can't remember, but it was some time ago, and that's when it was brought to my attention. Like, you don't use that word. That
but
combination.
Who actually originated? Was it Heinlein?
It might have. I don't know.
I mean, there must have been some military SF fiction writer back in the 50s or so that would have. I mean, Space Marines is such an obvious term to come up with.
Yeah.
And in the chat, Charles says, "I'm a Marine. If I go to space, I am a Space Marine."
There you go. Hoorah! As they say.
There you go.
Right.
Oh, and also in the chat, Shanbot asks, isn't that why Champions is called the quote heroic RPG? And that may be.
It might be.
Because Champions was definitely done under a corporate banner by people who would have understood where the limits were, and they probably checked. So, but now we're free.
Yay!
All free. So let's get to our big story of the day, which is that apparently we have a guest.
Yes.
Here he is. So, Sean,
thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
all right, next week. No.
Yeah. so we know you from Gaming and BS, and now you have a new podcast. Tell us what you're up to and what's going on.
So at the end of Gaming and BS, I had started streaming online Saturdays. I mean, I get up early in the morning. There's nobody awake. There's nothing to do. My honey-do list does not exist at that point in time. So I figured if people would want to get up early enough in the U.S., and grab a cup of coffee and, hear me blather about what's been released in RPGs and things of that nature. So that started actually when Gaming BS was still in production. And then we sunset the podcast. It's still out there and available for download. Some of the folks in the chat, that's how I know many of them. So yeah, that's what I do now. A YouTube video here and there. And then running games for folks on the Discord server and playing in games that other members of our community. So the community lives on, and many have come to Gamehole Con, and that's how I met James, and I think like all three of you actually.
Yeah,
at Gary
Con
I
met you first at Game.
I
remember
we were on a panel.
Con. I remember specifically exactly where your booth was at the time. So, but what year did you start Gaming and BS?
So we did it for 7 years, and we ended in 2022, I believe, in June. So 2015. As a matter of fact, I think we just would have had our anniversary a couple weeks ago, September.
Okay,
so I think it's in my calendar where we started it.
So you and I met after I was finished with Roll for Initiative. That was over by that time.
Yeah, I think it was you. I think Peter and you might have been involved with the podcast with Chad and Satine, the Play podcast. I can't remember the title.
Yes, that was our. It was Game School.
We started
Game
the
School.
CSR podcast network, and so we had a number of shows.
That's right.
Really good. So Jonathan with Wargaming Recon is. I mean, obviously he was already doing that, but he became part of the network, and he still does, and it's good. And Peter's on it every week, and but. Yeah, Roll for and so yeah, the game school was a lot of fun. I'm kind of surprised it didn't take hold more than it did. I thought it was so well done. Speaking as a person who was not on the show, I can say that.
I can't say it because I produced.
I mean, I listened to it, but I mean, it was kind of a shorter run, if I'm not mistaken, right, Peter? Maybe it was a 20 episode.
It was. It just the hosts. Like Satine couldn't continue after the first year, neither could Chad. And then James and
well, we had an initial host that backed out pretty quick.
Oh yeah, she was on the first episode. She backed out. Yeah, right after the first episode.
Yeah, so I think our problem there was just getting people to stick with it. We had a lot of great guests, and it was a good show, but it was just too much of a commitment, I think, for some of the other folks, and so. That's all right. That happens.
Well, we also, Jason, we also had to start focusing a lot more on
Gygax magazine.
Well, Solarian, right? We had
it was Solarian by that point.
Yeah. So Solarian comes around, and we're like, just so much time invested in because we had to switch over, we had to rebrand and everything, and it just wasn't. We had to make some cuts. So one of the cuts we made was cutting the podcast network.
Yeah.
So we can't maintain all of this because we spread ourselves too thin. You spread yourself too thin, you can't get anything done. So
that happens.
We had to make some cuts.
For myself, I did the Roll for Initiative podcast. I co-founded that, and I was the co-host for the first 2 years, I think. I don't remember, but it got to a point where I had to do Gygax magazine instead. You could only do so much, and so Sean, I guess you ran into something similar.
with gaming NBS.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
what
mean, you
happened-
must have had something that was taking up your time instead.
Well, it was, I think one thing I never wanted to do, and with Brett, my co-host, was to pod fade. Like, we just didn't want to like get done and we would, well, it's just, I don't want to do it tonight. And then
Right.
that tonight turns into never again. So I never really wanted to do that. I don't know why I have my screensaver on. Everything just turns off. I'm like, anyways. So we had talked about it on and off here and there. I mean, in the last probably 6 months of the show, we were doing it every other week. So it wasn't like weekly for 7 years. It was weekly for probably 6.5. And then, but it was, to me, it was more, what do we want to talk about and continue talking about? And what does that look like? And I think we had talked, I mean, there's some out there that are, they're going on like 12 or 15 years. It's pretty crazy. And you can rehash, I think. Yeah. Well, case in point, Fear the Boot. Yeah,
What
they're
are they
going
at least their 15th year, maybe longer, 20th.
Yeah. They've been, I don't know if there's anybody that's been doing it longer, honestly. And, much respect to Dan, who has driven that, because he's I think him, and I don't know if Chad is still on there, but I know Dan he's the original, he's OG. And so we just decided, like, we'll get some time back and pursue other things. And I was starting to stream. I mean, there's been talks of, if you talk to Brett, he would say, I'd be willing to start it up. And I've asked, like, what would change.
Right.
And so I if I were to start it up again, we could do the same thing, but I don't know. I don't want to do the same thing and kind of the same results. I would want to take it a level further than just maybe a podcast. And that I don't know if I can do.
Right.
What would a
Right?
level?
Like, I would do, I don't know, maybe actual plays. I would want to go to more conventions. I would, I don't know. I tried a podcast after Gaming NBS. It was short-lived. It's GM Mastermind. That is still out there. And what I found with that, it was kind of I like the concept of it, which is select a topic and then bring on 2 people to talk about the topic, or 2 or 3 people, and they would be called the mind, right? So it's considered, if you know what a mastermind is, it's being able to consolidate thoughts from multiple people and come up with a better idea, essentially. So I would get those folks on there. But to your guys' point about the podcast network that you guys were running, the TSR podcast network, is that scheduling. And if you have one other co-host, it's like Monday, we're going to do it every Monday. And then if you don't do it Monday, you're going to do it the Sunday before. And it's very easy. It's just between 2 people. When you start throwing more people into the mix, especially with people have schedules and they aren't always consistently open on Monday nights or whatever time of day, it's kind of it's a relative pain in the butt.
Yeah, I think this is what I like about it. We're really at the beginning of this with Tabletop Weekly. This is episode 11, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think what is good for us is that with the 3 of us as the hosts, when one of us can't be there, the other 2 can just go on and do it, which is nice and easy. And we're not putting any pressure on ourselves here. I mean, with the shows that we've done in the past, there's so much research ahead of time. There's so much preparation. There's so much editing. And the truth is, podcasting is not a business unless you are part of, I don't know, Wondery or Spotify or one of the big, well-funded venture-backed firms, right? If you've got anything less than about 250,000 listeners every week, you're doing it as a hobby.
Yeah.
So just go ahead and have fun with it as a hobby.
Yeah. Like we spent on our stories here, we spent an hour of time finding some stories that we'd like to talk about, and then we talk about them on the show. That's, we didn't want to turn this into like another venture that we, go all in on. It's something we do on Sundays. We get together, we talk. If we screw the show up, we screw it up. It's not a big deal. We don't edit it. It's what it is.
We had some great ideas in the past for podcasts. I almost wish that the Con Men would have actually turned into something.
Dude, that would have taken funding. Like I realized early
Describe
on.
it. Let somebody steal the idea. Let's
That's
give people
fine. Yeah, good luck.
Let's put it out there for people.
Sure.
James,
But
give the rundown.
Well, the Conman was just basically, so after multiple years at TotalCon, we just kind of decided, wouldn't it be cool if we went to other conventions and did a podcast about the convention, the people who ran it, the games that were played, and things like that. But
where to eat, what things to do, what the con
Yeah.
is good for, all that. Like where to stay, how to get your hotel room, where to park, all that.
but that would require capital for us to go to
Yes.
all those cons. So
Yes.
it just kind of fizzled.
Yeah, if there's somebody out there who goes to all the cons in the year, do that podcast, please, so we can learn from you.
So somebody, a guy I know, author, he said that he was talking to me when I was, first started, because we started out doing the comment for a couple episodes, and I was like, oh, this is not obtainable. But he said that what we really need to do is like, do you remember the show Wild On?
Wild On Chicago?
Well, they would do different. They go different places. They would just say Wild On. It was like
I know
type
what you're
show,
talking about.
right?
Different than what I meant, but I
Yeah.
know what you're talking about. Yes.
He said that that's kind of the format you really need to do. It needs to be fun. It needs to be video. It needs to be kind of wild. You need to cut scenes. It can't be dry. And I was like, that would be awesome, but that takes an entire crew of people. That takes cameramen and editors and sound people and gaffers and script writers. And I was just like, yeah, you need a full budget for that.
No, you're going to get a huge audience. So outside of gaming, I've done other podcasts, and I mean, I started podcasting in 2006 with a music podcast, and this is so. I've done other things in gaming, and about 3 years ago, I got hired to do a podcast for iHeartRadio, based on an original idea of mine. It was called Jobsolete, and it was all about obsolete jobs. So and we had 2 professional hosts, great hosts. We had a whole crew with the editors and the producers and everything else. And I thought we were doing pretty good because we had about 130, 140,000 listeners every week for the first few episodes. And it started going up. And I'm like, this is great. This could be my job now. This could be what I do. And we got canceled after 1 year because we were just not doing it. We weren't making it.
Hey, I found another Jobsolete episode.
What? Oh yeah, there you go, podcaster. You should come back in just one episode about podcasters. But that's the truth. Is we found out that essentially, like with iHeartRadio, the way that the podcasts get big is that if you have an existing celebrity who's already got a following, then they can put out a show and people will go follow it. But if you're coming in and doing something from scratch, it's just, I hate to be defeatist about it, but it's just not a business.
Yeah, you can't be doing anything else. That's what you got to be doing. You got to like go all in. I'm sorry.
I was overseeing a podcast user group locally and started one up and would meet with. It ended up being literally a handful of people that would show up, every month.
Yeah.
But one of them had just started. She was 6 months into starting a podcast, and she started true crime, and she probably monetized hers, like getting true interest in sponsorship.
Yeah.
Like way before Gaming NBS. Like we were 4 or 5 years in, and she was probably getting like real deals. And, true crime is a big, huge genre, of the podcast sphere. So, the thing I would say is with the RPG podcasts, I mean, Glass Cannon has done it, which would be a true testament to getting off the ground without any. I mean, I don't know. None of them are celebrities necessarily, but they've been around for a long time, and I mean, many have quit their jobs, but they're they've got a lot of actual plays going on. They pay their performers. They've got a few different shows. They do Twitch, YouTube, I think, and something else. And so they have, and that's just the numbers you see. I don't know what they get for the audio podcasts, but
yeah,
I mean,
you're right. There is a path to viability, but you're right. I think it has to be somebody who's doing a multi-channel approach, who's really dedicated to
Sure.
it, who can put the capital behind it to really treat it like a 40-hour-a-week job for a while. And yeah, I hope more people do, because there are not enough gaming podcasts for me to listen to right now. So, I mean, there's enough gaming podcasts in the world, but there's not enough that I want to listen to. There's
Right.
about,
Yeah. I was going to say, you can't
Yeah.
throw a rock and not hit a podcaster.
right, but there's about 4 or 5 that I listen to regularly that I think are really good.
Right.
And that would be like Hambone's podcast, the Vintage RPG podcast,
Sure.
Kevin Borup's show, which is Arcane, sorry, not Arcane, Analytic Dice. There's another RPG history podcast. I don't remember the person who does it, but he just does a beautiful job every couple of weeks. You know, there are a few out there that are really good.
There's this RPG Sean show that I watched the other day, which is pretty
Never
good.
heard of
That's
that
not.
guy.
I don't put it out as an audio though. Audio show.
Well, I mean, what's the
You know.
difference between I don't know. It's okay. So it's not a podcast. It's a
Well, the difference
YouTube
is,
stream.
do I listen to it in the car or when I go for a run or something like that?
I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So let's talk about RPG, Sean.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Sure. You know, it's not entirely original. I don't think I'm doing anything, you know, revolutionary in that space. I think, you know, I was really regurgitating some of the news sources that are out there, like, and you know, that's Rascal, right? The news site Rascal. If you're not familiar with it, go over there and check them out. That's one of the folks that are behind that's Lindo Caldago, who uncovered the OSR, or not OSR, the SRD OGL fiasco from Wizards of the Coast. She may be known for, amongst other things. Like, she's a journalist, true and true, and you know, unveiled that, and then eventually, I can't remember who she was working for at the time that she broke that. I don't remember. But she has moved on and created her own website with a few others that are part of Rascal as well. It's a more of a freemium, premium website for RPGs. And then EN World is also a source. And then,
that's right. Yeah. They have a really good weekly show.
Yeah. And then Geek Native, which is, I mean, and you could find many of the stories from those. So it's not evergreen stuff, right? It's like crowdfunding, print releases, anything that might come up. I try to steer clear of the 5e space, even third-party publishing. I was getting kind of tired of going through the crowdsourcing pages and having 75-80% of them be 5e related products. And that's not a knock on the people that are creating 5e based products, but you're making that choice to hitch your wagon to the WotC world. And that's not something I'm interested in. I'm interested in folks that are not Wizards of the Coast necessarily. If something pops up and it's interesting, I'll mention it. But you know, it's not a D&D. I'm not going to ride the coattails. Like, I'm not going to pivot my YouTube channel to get 1 million viewers and the only way to do that is to do D&D. You know, that's not me. So
no, that's fair.
There you go.
That's fair. I mean, you're right. It's probably a lot easier if you're doing something around the largest game that's out there, but it's also a saturated market, and one that if you don't have a personal zest for talking about that, you're just not going to have any fun with it anyway.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. Like I haven't, you know, I've said on here a couple times, I don't play D&D. I haven't played D&D since, I don't know, the mid 80s. I mean, I've played a game or two here and there at conventions and stuff just to see, hey, what is this 3.5 like? Or what is 4 like? You know, I have played 5. But D&D is just not the system. The D20 system is not a system I particularly like that much. It's not bad. It's not a bad system. It's a fine system. It's just not my style of play.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I started with, well, I guess technically I started with D&D, but I really started with Top Secret. You know, we played a couple games of D&D and went, wait a second, what's this other game that's got modern stuff? Let's do that instead.
Right.
And then went back to D&D. But, you know, it was never like that was the only thing I could play anyway. So it's always just been a piece of the puzzle for me. Although I do, like I say, I do like 5e. I'm playing in somebody else's campaign and having a lot of fun with it. So, you know, it's still good, but I don't think I would want to base an entire show around it.
Yeah, I was like one of those jerks that basically thought AD&D First Edition was like the godsend, right? Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't play anything else until I got turned on to RuneQuest, and then from RuneQuest Champions, and then suddenly it's like, oh my, there's a whole world of things to do besides D&D. You know, Vampire came out, Top Secret SI came out, you know, just Star Frontiers was cool before you realized that it was broken, but you know, it's
Dude, we played everything. God, do you remember Bushido? Played that. We
Yeah,
played.
I remember the ads for Bushido, but I never saw it.
Oh, we played. We played. Oh my God, we played. What was that game? Phoenix Command. That was a nightmare. I don't know if you ever played that, but you could.
Never heard of it.
Oh, it's so granular. Oh my God, so granular.
well, here's the thing too. The company that did Phoenix Command expanded out IPs, which made even more horrible games. So they did. So honestly, they did Alien.
Okay.
So I have that somewhere on my bookshelf. Lawnmower Man. Like, why the hell would you want to play a Lawnmower Man RPG? And then they did Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Okay.
Like, is this like tactical Dracula? Like, well, what if Dracula broke out these weapons you never heard of before and decided to attack a small village? Yeah, Tacula.
Wait, so TSR put out a bunch of little war games that came in blister packs.
I have a couple of those,
and one of them was a vampire one.
Yeah, it was
a vampire war game.
I have it. I never played it, but I have it.
Yeah, I will have to dig that out. I'll tell you, this is the one thing that I would like to do some point if we ever feel like making a second show or something. I would love to do a show that's just lots of little one shots. Pull out all those things that sit on your shelf that you've read through, but you've never found anybody who's enough of a fool to play it with you.
You know what games I used to love? I used to love the company SPI. So there was this game called Universe. We played that for a long time, and Dragon Quest, played that quite a bit too. But those are two of the SPI games that I loved. But if it's funny, you could tell, like, it looks like an engineer wrote the game, because it's like chapter 1, and then the page in that would be 1.01, and then you get into section 1.0101. So
either an engineer or a lawyer.
Right. If you're an engineer or a lawyer, it's formatted for you.
Well, I'm going to throw a game name out there, and if you know of it, then you're in the know. If not, look it up. World Action and Adventure.
World Action and
Heard of that one?
It was basically a thesis written by some college guy, and the book was literally like, and for those listening in, it was almost telephone book like, and there was like all these different supplements.
And for those listeners who are younger, that is a book that used to come out with people's telephone numbers in it.
Right. Hey,
yeah.
It like when you post something on Facebook, oh, you put your phone number online, everybody could see it. It's like, well, there was a time, young man, that was in a book, and everybody had my number.
They could just look. You had to pay money not to be in the book,
right? And
there's an extortion scheme for you.
Right.
Give us money, or we're putting your number out to the world.
Wait a minute, not just number, your address.
Yep, your address.
Oh, that's right. Because sometimes famous people would forget, or they just wouldn't get unlisted numbers, and some kid from Poughkeepsie would suddenly be calling Kurt Vonnegut at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
I'm running a Delta Green game in the 90s right now.
Yeah.
It's in 1998. It's a different. You got to think there. I mean, you got to think differently.
Yeah.
Like, well, I'm just gonna, do this. Like, how?
No, you're not. Yeah. How are you gonna do that?
How are you gonna do it?
Yesterday at ShireCon, and so we didn't mention this, but James and I were at ShireCon this weekend, which was great. Really, it's one of those nice small conventions that started out as a 1 day. Now it's kind of a 1.5 day, just a couple of hundred people at most. But we played in Joey Royale's Weird Heroes of Public Access, WHPA Fairhaven. And in the adventure we were playing, he specified, we're going to another time, not a specific year, but before the cell phones, before avocado green and tangerine orange gave way to the colors of the future. And so in the game, we kept having to remember, we don't have cell phones, we don't have computers, we don't have any of that.
Right. You'd pull out your ADC book to figure out where you're going to go.
I don't
No.
know what an ADC
They
book is.
awfully darn careful. It's a map book. These giant map books that you'd buy for an area, and you'd flip from page to page. And when you got to the bottom of the map, it would tell you what page to go to, and you would go to that page, and then you would say, "Oh, this is where I need to go." You could plan your trip out. They were awesome.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's a map. I didn't know what an ADC was.
Just imagine you take one of those fold-out maps, but the fold-out map is like as big as your living room, and then they cut it into pages and put it in a book.
An atlas.
Yeah, it was,
Okay.
but it'd be for like certain little areas. It'd be like Baltimore would be an ADC book.
But Delta Green isn't automatically set in the 90s. So how did you end up with that game in the 90s?
Well, I mean, you can run it pretty much anytime modern era. I mean, whatever. But this scenario that I happen to be running takes place in like 1998. I mean, I could probably place it in 2014. It wouldn't take much, right? It's just like, okay, now people have cell phones and the internet, big deal. But so yeah, that's the only reason for the most part. But it's a good era in Delta Green too. I mean, if you know the history of Delta Green, which can be, the handler's guide's like 300 some pages of, so there's the agent's handbook and the handler's guide, and the handler's guide is all like history and different factions, and throughout the history of Delta Green, it's officially sanctioned, then it's not officially sanctioned. So as those changes come about, it can influence some of the missions that some of the Delta Green agents are on if the game master or the handler wants to implement those, right? So you become like, there's the outlaws, and then they it's kind of like the X-Files guys that were a spin-off. Do you remember the spin-off show?
No, but are you talking about, so I don't know a lot about the X-Files, and I don't know a lot about a lot of TV shows from that era.
Yeah.
But I do know that there were some guys on the X-Files that were like nerds that didn't really have connections.
That was the three. Those three guys.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so they got their own show, is what you're saying.
They did, I think, but it didn't run for very long.
Hey, Sean, have you ever seen this SCP?
Okay, tell us what you're holding up for the audio listeners.
So I got a book called the SCP Foundation. We talked about it like on our first or second show. This is a it's a community created thing. So it's anyone can write for it. Like you could write a book for this because it's all open, kind of like open source information. It's all these people put these stories together, and they're really awesome. It's all this. You could, if you don't know about it, you should go look it up, because you could use it with your Delta Green stuff easily.
I think I've heard of it, but I don't think I've seen it, or I know I haven't read it.
I mean, you can find it online. You don't have to buy anything. All this stuff is online too. Like a lot of stories. They have this whole network. It's awesome. It's really awesome. But the book is beautiful. I got a set. It's a set of 3 books. They and it's just basically like, you go through this and it tells you there's this item that's cursed, and this is what's cursed about. They're all just like they'd be like X-Files stories, right? So it's not a gaming book, but you could easily make an adventure out of any of one of the entries in there, especially for something like Delta Green.
Sure. Interesting.
You should check it out.
Very cool. I will have to check it out.
All right. So Sean, for anybody who's listening that wants to follow you, tell us where they can find you and where to look for you.
At RPG Sean on YouTube, or Sean P. Kelly. It's the Irish spelling, so it's reads like scene. So Scene P. Kelly with 2 E's in Kelly. So many people forget the second E. On Twitter or X or whatever. And then Blue Sky, same thing. You should be able to find me on there. And then we have our own Discord that I hang out on. So Saturdays, streaming on YouTube at RPG Sean, 8 a.m. Central Time.
Central Time. So I might actually be able to wake up in time for this then.
Yeah, East Coast, you guys are like probably been up for like 4 hours by that point.
No. Friday is my gaming. Friday's my gaming night. I'm lucky if I'm up before 11 because we play late.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks everybody for listening. That's it for this week, and have a good night.